Assalamu alaikum. This is an ITV exclusive coming to you from Durko at the Parliament offices in Cape Town. We will be listening to the Deputy Minister as well as TCSA as they visited Syria earlier this year. We will hear from them about the first-hand experiences on what is happening on the ground in Syria.
The Republic of South Africa, Government of the Republic of South Africa, its foreign affairs and international relations policy is built very much on the experience of the liberation movement during the anti-apartheid struggle. It's built on solidarity, human rights. Those are the key aspects of our foreign policy. The Syrian conflict, issues that have been happening over there have had an impact here in the Western Cape as well, in terms of the discourse. So it's important that we talk. But more importantly, there was a group of South Africans, South African volunteers that went this year to Syria. They went to Syria, they went on a humanitarian mission, and they discovered many things in Syria, and they will speak to us about basically what they discovered. They are known as the Truth Collective South Africa, TCSA, and they will be presenting shortly. But the presentation is also within a context of a recent visit by the Deputy Minister, Nomadim Faketo, to Lebanon and Syria in May this year. And she will also be in conversation with them, and then we will then basically open up to the floor for you to basically interact with what they have said and to also share your views in terms of what's happening. Without any further ado, I'm now going to hand over to the delegation that has visited Syria, the TCSA delegation.
TCSA was founded in Cape Town in June of 2015. We are a community group coming together across all race, religion and tribe to celebrate and inspire freedom and the global family. We are truth seekers and will pursue beyond media and second-hand reports the stories and events that affect the rights and privileges of humans across the world. During our first meeting, Syria was the relevant news issue and we decided to pursue it. TCSA met with Deputy Foreign Minister of Syria, Dr. Faisal Maqdad, who travelled to Cape Town on an official visit during July of 2015. Dr. Maqdad briefed TCSA on the situation in Syria at the time, and the TCSA introduced plans to Dr. Maqdad to travel to Syria. Dr. Maqdad showed great enthusiasm and met with the TCSA a number of times. Also present were current SA Ambassador to Syria, Sean Bielefeld, previous SA Ambassador to Syria, Mr. Mohammed, also Ibrahim, ex-SA Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as other officials.
On this particular day, we have our great honor to have Mr. Dr. Faisal al-Maqdad, who is Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs in Syria, and we have pointed to him our warm and our heart. We actually have a long conversation about what's happening in Syria, and he told us so much about Syria. And on this particular day, we have so much delegation from South African who was sharing and told to the Syrian people today, we will retain the favor.
TCSA grows in reputation in South Africa and Syria. The Syrian interest in TCSA grew, being the first South African group to visit Syria. TCSA received an official invitation to visit Syria from Elias Murad, chairman of Syrian Journalists Union based in Damascus under the instruction of Dr. Faisal Maqdad. We raised awareness locally of the planned trip to Syria. We had just under a month to departure to acquire more members and interest. We approached members of the community for donations, purchased medical supplies and put together donation packages. TCSA travels to Syria. On the 30th of August in 2015, Bakar Al-Maharmeh, Pierre Potgieter and Beverly Joffe of TCSA departed Cape Town for Beirut. We were met by Syrian officials from the Syrian Journalists Union and crossed the Syrian border by car to Damascus, arriving at 4 a.m. on the 31st of August. on the 31st of August at 11 a.m., the TCSA's first meeting took place with Elias Murad and Razouk Algawi, another executive member of the Syrian Journalists Union. Our meeting expounded the introduction of TCSA and our interests and goals in Syria. Their department then arranged an itinerary for us covering interviews and meetings, such as on the 31st of August, we were escorted by Mr. Algawi to meet Major General Osama Khadur, Director of Political Administration of the Syrian Army, who gave us a situation report of what the Syrian Arab Army is currently facing. TCSA on Syrian news. On the 31st of August, Bakr al-Maharmeh was interviewed on Arabic Al-Akhbariya Syria, which was aired on the 1st of September. On the 1st of September, Pierre Potgieter and Beverly Joffe were interviewed in English on Al-Akhbariya Syria, which was aired on the 2nd of September. TCSA preparing the donations. On the 1st of September, we assembled supplies, assisted by some Damascus locals, enthusiastic about what we were doing. Sweets and the donations of medical supplies were wrapped in South African flags. On the 1st of September, the evening, while Mr. Potgieter and Ms. Joffe were being interviewed, Mr. Al-Maharmeh handed out packages of sweets and money at orphanages and shelters for displaced people. Visit to Tishreen Hospital. On the 2nd of September, TCSA visited Tishreen Military Hospital, 27 kilometers outside of Damascus. We were met with Director General Talal Mahala, who briefed us. We were taken to visit the wounded soldiers and speak with them. We donated money to 177 badly injured soldiers, and Mr. Potgieter and Mr. Al-Maharmeh donated blood. TCSA donated medical supplies as well. TCSA visit to Damascus Hospital. On the 2nd of September, TCSA met with Director General of Damascus Hospital, Dr. Adib Mahmoud. He briefed us, and while there we heard of the bombing of the local technical engineering college earlier that day. We saw many of the injured students admitted to the A&E and spoke to those who were awake, as well as other patients similarly being treated for explosion injuries. We donated money and supplies. TCSA visit to the Greek Melkite Church. On the 3rd of September, TCSA visited the Greek Melkite Catholic Church Global Headquarters in Damascus and interviewed Vicar Joseph Abisi. The vicar showed us the extensions for the church school built for extra shelter and displaced students. TCSA made a monetary donation to the church. The visit to Umayyad Mosque. On the 4th of September, TCSA visited the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus and met with the chairman, imam and trustee of the mosque. TCSA were given a traditional Muslim welcome. We attended the Friday prayers and we also donated money. TCSA final meetings in Syria. On the 5th of September, TCSA interviewed Dr. Yassin, medical director of Al-Mahaini Private Hospital. The previous director and his son had recently, in 2012, been murdered by rebels because the hospital had granted free admissions for terrorist victims. We were shown the emergency rooms and we saw the same lack of working equipment as sanctions of blocking new parts arriving for the machines. On the 6th of September, TCSA met with Dr. Faisal Maqdad. We handed over a plaque from TCSA to the Syrian people and Dr. Maqdad thanked us for all our efforts, as he had been closely following our progress in Syria. He relayed warmth and gratitude to South African people and the South African government.
That is the final day. We come back to South Africa carrying so much things in our heart for the Syrian people. Today, I will say the last word on this particular screen. What we heard and what we saw and what we experienced, I would love every and each one in these rooms to experience it and see it for themselves. And I will say the Syrian people, border for the South African people, warmly open arms and border and welcoming every and each one to come and experience this for themselves. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
I'm going to respond by way of telling very briefly my story. And maybe when, we're asking questions, we will look at the similarities in that. And I must upfront thank TCSA for really saying we want to share this story. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this gathering we are having today. I went to Syria much later than you, May this year. And because it's my responsibility, I work in the Middle East and Asia. And because we preach neutrality in South Africa, no matter how you feel, you must go to a place and meet with government and those multilateral that are working in that country, including government for us means the opposition as well, so that you find yourself directly from what they are saying. Now, we were 6 days. I mean, we were not as thorough as you about, what were we doing in the first day. We started in Jordan. In fact, we had 4 countries: Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. And because of what happened in Iraq whilst we were in Jordan, so we were told by security that we can't go to Iraq. So we had 3 countries. From Jordan, I think of interest to save time, from Jordan exactly we flew to Beirut as you did, and drove to Damascus. It was after 12 in the evening. The same experience you experienced. There were many posts. Yes, we were with the security car in front, and then the minister, the deputy minister, waited for us at the Beirut-Damascus border. We got into Damascus. My first surprise was to see restaurants at after 12, after 1 o'clock. Restaurants full of people as you get into Damascus. For me, a mere state of emergency in South Africa, not war, mere state of emergency. We know what are the characters, what community does when there's. It was a surprise that there were people and they couldn't have been placed by the government. There were too many for being placed there by the government. The next day in Damascus, my meeting started from meeting the government, starting from foreign affairs and few ministers that are in government. But what was key for me, because at that time, the narrative was about the regime change, about Syrian army that is killing people together now. It's when Russia intervened already. They were killing people in Syria. The story from him was it was difficult to continue with the negotiation because you could see that those people who are also fueling this war are outside and keep on calling people from inside. I didn't meet with the envoy himself, but his advisor and the secretariat. I went to their office. That's where a clear picture for me was drawn. The advisor was saying they are responsible for trying to have a ceasefire, and these Geneva, talks were their initiative per a United Nations Security Council resolution. And part of their work is to save people from being killed unnecessarily, including those armed forces that are in Syria. As a result, she goes into Aleppo and those camps. And if those people want assistance to be taken out of Syria, she does that herself. She's the one who painted, who I started believing, because the opposition and the government was saying there's ISIS and all kinds of groupings, you name them, they are there.
The process is now underway because we're not giving up. We're starting again today to try to do the three things. Evacuate those who have very high expectations, had very high expectations to finally get up, to get proper treatment, to have them evacuated, to get the medical supplies in, and to get the food and the other supplies in. It was very clear today that the Russians want to help us with the November plan implementation. They would like to help us get access to East Aleppo. They, just as the United States and the like-minded, pledged to help us in our humanitarian diplomacy with the armed opposition side, which is difficult and which in the case of the medical evacuations was not satisfactory. We lost a lot of time because of all of the conditions that were raised also on that side. A bitter war has become more bitter. A cruel war has become more ruthless. We need for the parties and the sponsors of the parties to help humanitarians do our work. If not, this winter will be terrible. It will be the worst winter in now the 6 winters that we have had in the conflict.
So I saw the United Nations, went to the United Nations, went to pay a courtesy call. My last event was to pay a courtesy call to the president himself, who appreciated the fact that South Africans are concerned about what is happening in Syria, and expressed a wish that if we can, he would really plead for South Africa to be part of the negotiation, given our experience, which is what I came back and conveyed to the government. I'm happy about this meeting. I think dialogues of this nature helps us as South Africa to have a clear perspective of what is happening, but much more because we come also from a history that the whole international community intervened for us to be where we are. So we do need to encourage more people to intervene, but within our understanding of what the international community did to us to be where we are. But for us to be able to do that, we need to understand very clear what is happening. At the moment, I think we need to have more dialogues. I want to end by saying, for me, sitting where I'm sitting, and also coming, like many people around this table, from the liberation movement that freed this country, it would be a sad day if what is happening in Syria or any other country for that matter can have an impact of dividing us in South Africa or can impact negatively. We need to give reports. Whenever something happens, we need to give report. We need to send different people or different delegation. I do that in many countries. I work in Sri Lanka. There are support groups that are in Durban and Joburg. When I go to Sri Lanka, I go to those support groups, and even though some of them never even lived in Sri Lanka, I go to them and tell them I'm going to Sri Lanka. If some of them want to come, they come and interact, and I come and report back to them about what is happening. Because for me, that is a way of not bringing the conflict to South Africa, because people don't understand what is happening in the area. And also, getting support and people pointing out themselves if there's something wrong or we're handling the issue in a wrong way as government or those NGOs that would go there on humanitarian grounds. Thank you very much.
That was an exclusive coverage of the report back meeting by the Deputy Minister and the TCSA, as we have heard and watched of the dire situation in Syria, which is now in its 6th year of civil war. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease all the pain and suffering of all of our Syrian brothers and sisters and all the Muslims around the world. Ameen. From myself, Farah Sibda, shukran for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.